back to another video, and today we will be doing sort of a collective palette review from eyeshadow palettes that I've been trying out recently. Today we're going to be going through some mini reviews of palettes that I've been trying out. I'd say these are from the last 3 weeks time, and there are some like, I don't think they're like super new palettes. There's just been like palettes that have been sort of in my drawers for some time. There were a couple of ones that I've actually gotten recently but aren't like new to the market, so there's a bit of a mix here. Some of these palettes, and you will see the photos, I have already like also decluttered, so there were a few palettes here that I thought that after sort of 2 weeks of trying them out that I would not be sort of, they weren't like interesting enough to keep in my collection, and because I do have quite a lot of palettes, I don't want to keep palettes purposefully that I know I won't be using. But anyway, let's get to the palettes, and for most of these you will be seeing swatch images, so hand swatches of the shades, and also with some there are also looks. However, there are one palette I think where I forgot to do the swatches before I decluttered it, and also there might be one palette that I don't have any looks because I used it in a week that was quite busy, so I didn't have time to take photos. But anyway, let's now get to the palettes that I have tried and how I felt about them. So I checked my placement, so you will be seeing the images somewhere here. So first palette that I'm discussing is the Beauty Bay Neutral 16 pan version. So I got this last year, and I think there's like one shorts that I have used this, and I saw this was a palette that I also forgot to rank in my last year's palette ranking. However, because I only tried it once, I also didn't feel comfortable enough included in a yearly ranking. So this palette is something that I did declutter already, and you will be seeing now, I think, a photo of the palette and one look that I made with this one. So the main reason why I sort of decided that I decluttered this almost like immediately after 2 weeks trying out period ended was that this wasn't like my favorite color story, and I think the most issue I had with it was that the only like the shimmers that are in this palette, they are all the sort of satin type of shimmers that Beauty Bay includes like into some of their palettes, but I prefer the more sparkly formula that Beauty Bay has. And I only have one look with this one, you will be seeing it on the screen. However, that's not actually a very big issue regarding this palette, because there really wasn't, because most of the, like, I do think the gradient of the matte shade was quite, like, there was like a white, there was a black, and then there was sort of more deeper browns and then lighter browns in this one. But especially with the shimmer shades, I think those were like the biggest, like, what made the palette something that I knew that I wouldn't gravitate towards, because shimmer shades were actually something that made this kinda, I felt that I got the same look all over again, because the sort of satin shimmer browns, there were I think 3 or 4 browns in it that were this sort of satin, and those were very similar. They had bit different undertones when you look them in the pan, but they looked very similar, and the sort of lighter shimmer shades that this had. Those also, even though you will probably see from the image, the one looks like it's a bit more pink leaning, and then the other one looks like it's more of a white silver shade, but those two translated also quite similar to the eye. So basically the look you're seeing in your screen is the sort of look I felt that I got every time I used the palette, even though it had 16 shades. However, regarding the formula of this palette, it is quite like, if you like satin shimmers and you like Beauty Bay's quality in general, I didn't have any longevity issues with this one, and the blending and working with the shades was as good as with other Beauty Bay palettes. So because of the shimmers, this just wasn't my cup of tea, but if you like the more satin kind of shimmers, which I do know that for some people those are much more flattering on their eyelid, and more people like to work with those. So I think for someone like that kind of person, the palette would be actually quite good, especially if you just want this, or the sort of like the more easy everyday going neutral makeup. Then this certainly, like, the palette is quite inexpensive. I think it's 18 euros, and Beauty Bay runs sales constantly, so you will be able to also get it on deal. But unfortunately for me, this palette just wasn't it. Well, it's something that has been making appearances in my channel, but now I'm giving my final review thoughts about it. So this is the Blend by Sickle Sweet palette, and soon it will be covered by the swatch images and images, because I have done quite many looks with this one, and for a good reason. But first, before the images will pop in your screen, I will show how this looks from the inside. And this has now returned my hope for Blend Bunny, because we all know the Sugar and Grunge, that was quite of an It had some pastel shades, and those were quite of a disappointment compared to the, for example, the shades I tried from the Dollhouse palette, and the Sugar and Crunch ended up getting decluttered from my collection. And then my brother got this for me as a Christmas present, and this is an excellent pastel palette. It is more of a neon pastel palette, so consider that are those like shades that will fit your skin undertone, but these are all very beautiful. I'd say why these pastel works better than, for example, the pastels the Sugar and Crunch had. I think that these have enough of a white base in them, so for pastel shade to really make it pop, there should be enough like a white base in the sort of pigment mix, and these pastels, like all of them, have it. So with this one, they build it very easily. They were easy to work with. Also, what makes this palette especially great is the sort of the dark inclusion of darker matte shade, which truly makes this very versatile. So you will now see the sort of swatches and the looks I created with. You can see that I did make I think it was the first shorts I filmed was that I tried to do an all pastel look, but with most of the looks I did try to use the sort of and also the darker shade in my inner corner to get some dimension in them. Something I will say about the shimmer shades, which was a bit strange, that I do feel that something with the shimmers, they sort of sink into the, I know this sounds very strange, but it was regardless what shimmer I used, it sort of felt that they sunk into the matte shade that I was using underneath, and I felt that it really didn't quite many times matter what kind of shimmer I used, because those ended up just translating looking like the matte shade I had under it. So I think with the shimmers they just don't have as much of a pigment base under them than compared to, for example, some other shimmers on the market, but I'm really not gonna hold that against it because I really like this palette a lot, and this really has returned my faith into the brand and the brand being able to do excellent palettes. So if you are in the market for good neon pastel palette that also has deepening up shade and has beautiful sparkly shimmers, then this is a recommendation. And I think from the looks, images of the looks that you're able to see, you can do quite a lot with this one. So a recommendation, and this definitely has been worth every penny or every euro, and I'm very happy that I did get this as a Christmas present, and this is a definitely recommendation. So next one is a W7 palette that I did try a little bit last year, and I did include this in the yearly ranking. However, after now trying it a bit more properly, well, I would already say that I don't think it would have changed where I ranked it. But so this is the W7 Influence palette. And with this one you will be just seeing swatch images because I used this on a week where I just really didn't have time to film or anything, and this is how the palette, so this is duping the Huda Beauty Empowered palette, and I haven't tried the Empowered palette. However, I think this was actually a pretty good choice for me to buy something cheaper and try out the color story. What I will say is that there are two cream shades, this black over here and this actually other quite out. This also basically translates into a black. So I haven't tried the cream shades because I did swatch them when I got this, and they felt so emollient that I immediately knew that, well, with my sort of quite oily lids, I will not even start trying them because I knew that probably they would just end up creasing. But if we ignore the cream shades, I will say that this is quite of an improvement of W7 palettes that I've tried previously. I, for example, had issue with a couple of other palettes that I've tried from them, is that the shimmers sort of crease away during the daytime. And they crease so badly that I basically didn't have any shimmer on my lids at the end of the day, and this is something that I haven't had in any other palette, drugstore, or any other category happening to me. However, with this one I am happy to say that the shimmers, they don't crease away, they do stay on my lids quite well, and I'd say overall, if W7 is a brand that's easily available to you and you kind of like the color story, and you especially maybe want to try out the color story before committing to the Huda Beauty Empowered palette, then this is actually not a bad choice. As I said, unfortunately I don't have looks with this one, but the looks that I did create with this one, I really liked them. They lasted through my a whole work day. There are a couple of kind of looks with this one. You will get, obviously because it is quite gold shimmer heavy, so there you will get some sort of a neutral eye with a gold, but there are some sort of these purplish shades, so you can kind of get a purple burgundy leaning look with this one, and then you can go with maybe also a bit lighter with some of the browns in here. So there are a couple of things you're able to do with this one. As I said, I'm not gonna comment on the cream shades because I just made the conclusion that I'm not even gonna not even gonna try with those because of how my lids and skin type is. But this one, if it's easily available to you and you're kind of looking this kind of color story at a budget, then this isn't actually a bad palette. I would recommend it. Palette that I got when the brand sort of launched their Kiko sort of stand in our local department stores, and I wanted to sort of now get something when they had their sort of launch weekend. So this is the Glamour Multi-Finish Eyeshadow palette in this, this is in the variation 02. This does, I will put it in the description box, this does actually have also like a name, but Kiko has the funny thing that they don't put the names in sort of the package, sort of the compacts or the packaging of their products. This is quite of an, I have like, you will probably see there are two looks that I did like, I have images from you will see the swatches. So this is, I would say, quite typical neutral orangey bronzy palette. You can get like a depth with this one, and the other look that you will be seeing the images from, I have used the sort of black in here. So there are a couple of things you can do with this one. There is the sort of golden bronzy look, just a bronzy look, or with the sort of smoky bronzy look. Something I will say about the shimmers, this has the more sort of a satin-like shimmer formula that Kiko has in a lot of their staple line palettes. It doesn't have the sort of, because their whole Christmas palette from last year that I have, and I did rank relatively high in my drugstore palettes from last year, that had the sort of more sparkly wet shimmer kind of formula. So this doesn't have that one, and you will probably see it from the swatches that will be on the screen. But I'd say overall from this one, it is a palette because obviously I haven't decluttered it, so it will stay in my collection. It's gonna be actually quite a good palette when I need something small for traveling, because it still has 9 shades, but it is like this sort of very small compact. But is it like the best drugstore eyeshadow palette? No, but it's very consistent with Kiko's other. So if you like Kiko's sort of matte formula and satin formula, which is very easy to work with, it's very beginner friendly, and the brand is something that's quite like easily accessible to you, then I would recommend the palette. But just so you're aware, you're not gonna get anything too like dimensional or multichromish or anything like that. It's just like good, I'd say good like basic makeup, and you certainly will have to, especially with this one palette, you do have to like your bronzy looks if you want to buy it. Okay, and the last palette of the video, this again you will be only seeing images because I have decluttered it, and that will probably tell quite a lot. So this was the 10 shade Mauve Artistry palette from Profusion, and Profusion was one of those brands also that have recently launched a proper like stand in our stores, so there are like now a whole range of products to choose from. And I have tried Profusion palettes eyeshadow previously, and I think the experience was quite similar to my experience that I had from them previously. I'd say if this is the only drugstore eyeshadow that's easily available to you, you can't like go wrong with this one. I do think the eyeshadow quality is quite good, but especially I think why this palette got decluttered, and you will see it, the look who you will be seeing on your screen, it is the most dimensional look you were able to get out of this one. So this palette was hindered quite a lot that the shimmer shades looked quite similar on the eyes, and also the fact that the matte shades, even though they were a bit differentiation in the pan, they sort of mixed in together into one matte shade. The only way that I felt that I got depth into my looks was there was the one sort of shimmer darkish sort of pink, and that's something that did not sort of immediately like blend in with all the like the matte shade that you had underneath it. So with that one I was able to get like somehow a bit depth into my looks, but this one, it was just the palette was just very one-dimensional, and like I said, the formula is quite okay. I do say that it's not the most easiest drugstore formula to work with, but it's not like something that I would say that you can't work with it all. But I would maybe, if you're eyeing these Profusion palettes, then maybe I would just choose another palette that has a bit more variety in tones, because with this one, after I had tried it a couple of weeks, I immediately knew that, well, I for example have the Natasha Denona Retro, and well, we can't compare the formulas because obviously the Natasha Denona formula is much more sophisticated. However, in terms of color story, in that one I have the rosy tones, but there are also, we have like light and depth shades in this one, so in that one, so we have like very dark shades, and we have also very light shades, but also we have some taupes in that one. So there's like, it's a rosy palette, but there's already much more variety compared to, for example, the Profusion one. As I said, I'm not making a formula comparison between these two because it's obvious that the Profusion one has a more drugstore type of formula, but just like in terms of color story, I immediately knew that I have something already in terms of color story, and that palette already has much more variety. So yeah, I think that was like, as I said, if the brand is available to you, maybe try another palette from them that has a bit more variation on the tones, because with this one you will just end up getting the same look all over again. So those were sort of my quick reviews from palettes that I've tried recently. I'd say well, if I would have to like do a ranking, then the Blend Bunny Sickly Sweet would be like the this was probably like the favorite from all of the ones that I did try, even though the other palettes that did stay in my collection, like all the palettes that did like survive the sort of declutter part of the sort of this review process, they are good and they will have a place in my collection, but the Sickly Sweet is definitely something that I think was like the top star of these palettes. Comment down below what have been the eyeshadow palettes you have been trying out lately and how you felt about them. If you like this video, then push the like button, subscribe to the channel, and if you want to get notifications from future videos, then ring the bell button. You can also find me on Instagram with the nickname Makeup Hedgehog. I hope I will be seeing you in another video soon. Bye bye!